All right, thank you very much, Francis. Okay, welcome back. Let's get some more reaction, of course, to the President's address to the nation. Some political reaction. Let's start with the ANC's Pule Mabe. Mr. Mabe, good evening to you. Your reaction, please.
Crescenta, evening and evening to your viewers. Well, we do welcome the address by the President, which effectively shows that we are a resilient nation, but the President did indicate that we do not need to let our guard down. We need to continue practicing all of the health safety protocols to make sure that the achievement we have seen over the past few months in terms of the decline of infections as well as the decline of the death cases in our shores is further sustained. But what is also encouraging is the fact that work is being done to make sure that ultimately we find a vaccine. The collaboration that is being made by pharmaceutical companies here in our shores to be able to have a candidate vaccine and ultimately participate in that space shows that we are not just a resilient nation, but we are also prepared to contribute towards finding a long-lasting solution to this problem. But also, what was encouraging, Criselda, is that the President also went on to speak about the economic recovery plan, which is anchored on infrastructure development. We have been seeing a number of projects that have been launched over the past few weeks, if I may say, which indicate that we are not just wanting to save our people from the vaccine, but we also want to make sure that there is a sustained economic growth that comes with the effort that the ANC-led government is driving forward.
Mr. Mabe, we don't have much time on you. We've got lots of political reaction to get through. Just a quick question, unrelated. Are you headed to Bloemfontein on Friday to support the Secretary General of the ANC?
Well, the officials of the ANC did address that issue today and indicated that members of the ANC...
Are you going, Mr. Mabe? Are you going?
I'm trying to answer your question. That, of course, I will be going in my personal capacity as a member of the African National Congress, not in any way representing the party as it was pronounced today by the officials. There are resolutions of the ANC that begin to guide the conduct of ANC members as it relates to this. Officials have had a briefing today led by the Deputy Secretary General and Treasurer General, and their message was quite clear on how members of the ANC are expected to conduct themselves during this time. Also drawing from the message coming from the Secretary General of the African National Congress.
Pule Mabe, the national spokesperson of the ANC. Francis.
All right, let's speak to the opposition. We're joined by the DA leader, John Steenhuisen. Mr. Steenhuisen, your reaction to what was said tonight, this further opening up, in fact, announced by the President.
Indeed, and I think that certainly what tonight was an admission of just how much devastation lockdown has wreaked on South Africa's economy. Clearly, the President realizes this is not an option for us to go back to. It has caused huge harm and damage to the livelihoods of many, many South Africans, and very, very clear that he's going to not take us back into that. But obviously the threat that remains is unhelpful towards creating business and investor confidence. But the big surprise of this evening, the extension of the state of disaster. And one has to ask the question, what do we need the state of disaster for? There's no reason for us to have it in place, and it has been used as a mask for corruption, maladministration, tender fraud, and the removal of key oversight mechanisms that have seen huge amounts of public money going missing. Completely inexplicable.
Haven't those issues been dealt with on the tender fraud? Haven't there been the initial sort of ease with which those tenders could be pursued? That's been revoked. And there's still some measures in place that the Disaster Management Act or whatever it is would require, I mean, to prevent those super spreader events.
Not true. There's nothing that can happen under the Disaster Management Act that can happen under any normal set of regulations that are there. Bear in mind, the Disaster Management Act is a draconian set of measures. You could well pass COVID-19 health regulations that would then obviously prevent those super spreader events happening. You don't need the army on the streets. You don't need curfews. You don't need that type of restriction of civil liberties to be able to achieve that. And you don't need the removal of the key elements of oversight that the Disaster Management Act has put in place over the course of the last few months. So the question remains, what do you need this act in place to do that you can't achieve without it?
Yeah.
There's still no answer to that question.
You say that the threat remains. Just explain that. You mean the threat of a higher lockdown level? And then my question would be, but surely that threat is just real, but given what's happening in Europe and other parts of the world?
Well, Europe and the other parts of the world are going into their winter. We're going into our summer. We already know that a second spike here is relatively unlikely. And having had a look at the data, it's very clear that with our much younger population, we're not nearly as risk as countries in the Northern Hemisphere and older economies. But also, our economy is so much more vulnerable to the economic shocks and effect of a lockdown than any other one in the developed world. And we've seen that, which is precisely why the World Health Organization has counseled against lockdowns in developing countries, because they become drivers of poverty, drivers of hunger, and drivers of even greater inequality in those societies. So very clearly, they don't work in the developing world context, and as we've seen here, often cause more harm than good. We now have 3.5 million people who've been pushed into the unemployment queue during this particular crisis. Poverty is the number one killer in countries like South Africa. It is at the root cause of many of the health morbidities and the struggle that people go through every day.
We have to end it there. Lots of political reaction coming in. Thank you for your time, John Steenhuisen, DA leader. Kusaba.
All right, the EFF's Vuyani Pambo joins us now. Mr. Pambo, good evening to you. Thanks indeed for your time. The President, of course, addressing the nation tonight. What's your reaction to that?
Well, thank you very much for having us, Griselda. We're happy to be here. We'd like to pass our condolences to the family of Magwetu and Mongameli. We hope that they may find peace and comfort during this difficult time. Look, the President essentially just said nothing of significance. What is difficult for us to understand is why he's taking away the relief measures. We think that it's important that they remain, that the unemployment grant is extended, and that it becomes permanent and is put to 1,000 rand at least. We also think that the relief, grants that we've given to our grannies and to our, to the child grants, they must also be extended, because nothing has really changed. There are no conditions that have changed that necessitate that these relief measures must be taken away. So the extension of the lockdown is essentially just something to mask, what is really happening in this country. The reality is that COVID-19 is still with us, but
All right, we do apologize for that. I'm really hoping we would be able to get the EFF's Vuyani Pambo back with us. But essentially, we're going to get lots more political reaction on this particular one. We're hoping also to hear from the IFP as well as COPE, as well as, the ATM as well. Francis, I think you're on with our next guest.
Yeah, we have Mkhuleko Hlengwa from the IFP. Mr. Hlengwa.
The President really was reminding all of us that the realities and grave dangers of COVID-19 are still very much prevalent and within all our spaces. And so the citizenry has to continue exercising the necessary disciplines and protocols. But the situation, of course, in the Eastern Cape is absolutely concerning. And it's indicative, of course, of a governance structure there, which for all intents and purposes is not fit for purpose, and we've seen blunder upon blunder in that part of the country, and therefore serious interventions in that regard are absolutely necessary and urgent. And if it means government invoking Section 100 to actually take over the operations of the province, it may prove to be beneficial. The Eastern Cape has been a perennial headache, and the risk for the people of the Eastern Cape by and large prevail because, amongst other things, there's a systematic collapse of governance over time. Of course, the issues of alcohol, which the President spoke to in part by opening normal hours of trading, remain of fundamental concern when we know the implications and ripple effects of alcohol, including the dangers of drinking and driving, the risks that it poses to women in particular, insofar as gender-based violence is concerned, and of course that our hospital and medical system cannot cope during this time with the burdens that are actually brought upon it by alcohol consumption behavior is an issue of great concern to the IFP as well. And if
Mr.
Klengwa,
in a democracy where you allow people freedom of choice as much as possible, is it sustainable to sort of inhibit those rights to drink for long periods?
It's not the inhibition of rights that we're speaking to, but it's the emphasis on the responsibilities that come with rights. And so the point I was saying is that in as much as the President has made those announcements which are of concern to us, it remains of importance that we remind South Africans of the dangers that come with this particular reality. We are quite mindful of the fact that South Africans have had to make serious sacrifices over the past few months, but we should not allow complacency to sit in during a difficult time, particularly when the second wave is very much upon us and ahead of a festive season, which is riddled with uncertainty. So the point remains that whatever happens, it's personal disciplines and protocols insofar as prevention is concerned that have to take precedent in everything that we do.
All right, Mkoleko Lengwa from the IFP. Griselda, you're back with the EFF.
Well, that's right, Francis. A bit of a cut in our line there. Back with us again is Vuyani Pambo of the EFF. Mr. Pambo, let's give you more time on this. You were reacting to the President's address this evening.
Yes. Well, essentially, Griselda, what we're saying is that the President's message is not consistent. He extends the lockdown, but at the same time, he does not extend the relief measures for our, brothers and sisters who are unemployed. That by January, this grant will be taken away. The reality is that there are no jobs for our brothers and sisters to get. So it follows logic that this grant must be extended and made permanent until we see a significant move towards curbing the unemployment in this country. But also the opening of alcohol sales on weekends and also the opening of international travel is a suggestion that there is no crisis of COVID-19. So it's not consistent what the President has just announced. So it only follows that there needs to be an extension of all the relief measures that were put in place during the COVID-19 pandemic, during the time that it was rather the disaster regulations were announced. So it is only when where you put those measures in place will we know that for sure that this government is interested in saving lives. But the whole talk about the absence of COVID-19.
All right, we do apologize, but we get the gist of what the EFF has been saying. The President's message is inconsistent, according to the EFF's Vuyani Pambo. Francis?
Yeah, we have Dennis Blum from COPE on the line. Mr. Blum, your response to the President's address.
Good evening, Francis. No, we are very much disappointed that the President did not report back on the COVID-19 PPE's corruption investigation. It's almost 2 months now that the SIU and the Hawks are busy with this investigation and no action at all against anybody. Millions of rand are stolen. The President has promised harsh action against all these thieves, but nothing. We smell again here that the President wants to cover up on his comrades. Now, we are saying on this extension, nobody must underestimate this dangerous enemy, COVID-19. Some people behave as if there is no more COVID-19. We must our own safety and health is in our own hands. Nobody, not soldiers, not police, can save us from this dangerous enemy. So it is not in anybody's hands. It is in our hands.
All right, so you support the president on that, but picking up on what you said on the special investigating unit, those investigations launched into COVID-19 corruption. So you believe 2 months was enough time to sort of name names, get prosecutions ready?
There was list. The president has said to us, and he has called on all provinces to submit a list of companies that have tendered, and the list are there. Now, we don't understand why it is so difficult. 2 months from now, from that day up until now, no result. We can't believe that. There is something happening. Why is it that these people, these thieves, are not being arrested? Churches came out, everybody was screaming.
Mr. Blum, thank you very much for your time. Dennis Blum from COPE, and we continue to bring you political reaction to the early announcement by the President tonight. Chris Helder.
Indeed, Francis. Peter Groenewald from the FF Plus is up next. Mr. Groenewald, very good evening to you. Your reaction to the President's address tonight?
Good evening. Well, firstly, the Freedom Front Plus says that the level 1 lockdown should have been removed completely. South Africa doesn't need any level of lockdown anymore. The President himself admitted that there are still businesses who are still not fully operational. That means that there are people who does not earn an income, who cannot go back to work, and therefore we say that he should have lifted the complete level 1. Secondly, we still have to wait for the details in the regulations. There's uncertainty and we're not clear. For instance, we don't know whether the curfew, which as far as the Freedom Front Plus is concerned, is irrational from 12 to 4 in the mornings, whether that is going to be removed or not. We also say that we want to see the detail when it comes to tourism. For instance, all the places, the accommodation allowed or not, whether there's still going to be a restriction on the number of people. Yes, we agree that people should keep safe distances and try to prevent the spread of the virus.
But Mr. Groenewald, just very quickly, Mr. Groenewald, there is a concern, though, that while government needs to balance the ailing economy, you've also got to balance the issue of saving lives. The President did mention an issue of what would look like a possible resurgence in the Eastern Cape. That should certainly, obviously, be of concern, in addition to ensuring that the economy gets back on its feet.
Well, the balancing of jobs and lives is not a new issue. It has been throughout the whole lockdown since it started earlier in this year. And we say that in the end, it's no use that we destroy the economy, because then we are destroying the livelihoods of people. And that is part of the balancing you will have to take. I mean, the fact that South Africa has a 92% recovery rate, that is, as far as I'm concerned, one of the biggest or the largest recovery rates in the world, and therefore we should have unlocked the economy in its totality to ensure that those livelihoods who still need that income can go back to work.
Mr. Groenewald, thanks indeed for your time. Lots more reaction, Francis.
Yeah, Bantu Holomisa from the UDM leader joining us now. And Mr. Holomisa, I'd like to talk about the President's address, but firstly the announcement tonight. I mean, incredibly, the President talking about COVID-19, and the former Nelson Mandela mayor, Mongameli Bubani, has passed away from COVID-19. A chance for you to give your condolences tonight.
We pass our condolences to his wife and children, as well as to their friends. We also pass our condolences to the UDM family in the Nelson Mandela Day. We have lost a hard-working gentleman, a person who was always
ready to attend to any problems in that municipality. We have seen it in pictures, in TV, and social media, where there have been problems. He would always be the first to arrive and fix the problem. We are sending our delegation, the leadership delegation, to the family at 2 o'clock in the afternoon tomorrow. And from there we will hear what is the wish of the family and which date will the funeral be. But we say to Bobs, go well, Bobs. You have done well. You have played your innings well against all odds. You have hit them for 4s and 6s. May your soul rest in peace.
Mr. Holomisa, we will certainly follow those meetings, everything that happens tomorrow. Very quickly, we have about a minute left. Your response to the President's address tonight?
The President's address this evening was spot on, and I think we should encourage him to constantly review the situation so that we can go back to our normal positions in this country.
All right, thank you very much, Bantu Holomisa, UDM leader, giving condolences there to the family and all the UDM members who knew Mr. Bobani very well, a former Nelson Mandela mayor. That announcement that he has passed away from COVID-19 coming in just before the President's address tonight.
That's right, and also we're expecting to hear in the next couple of hours and also tomorrow more tributes also pouring in on the passing of the outgoing Auditor General Kimi Makwetu. So that's where we're going to have to leave it this evening. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Good night.
African Perspective up next. Great to have you with us. See you tomorrow.